Mr. Guandol, you mentioned that CARE, which is the Council for American Islamic Relations, is a front for Hamas.
Yes.
Can you elaborate, please?
Well, there is so much evidence about CARE being a front for Hamas, but I'll walk it through from the very beginning. In 1993, the leaders of something called the U.S.-Palestine Committee, which is Hamas in the United States, held a meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The FBI covered this meeting, meaning they had physical surveillance, they put microphones in the meeting rooms, they tapped phone lines, because all the attendees of the meeting were leaders of the U.S.-Palestine Committee, which is Hamas. And the FBI's own documents from the assistant director of the FBI said all the attendees are Hamas members. And the evidence that we now have in 2014 from a variety of sources, but specifically two huge sources, one from that meeting and subsequent investigation that was involved in the Holy Land Foundation case, which was an over 15-year investigation by the FBI and Department of Justice, the Holy Land Foundation being a Hamas entity. A lot of the evidence we got there. So let me just back up and say, kind of put it in context. The Muslim Brotherhood came to the United States in the 1950s and started establishing organizations here in the 1960s. On order from the International Muslim Brotherhood to establish Palestine committees, Palestine sections in every country where the Muslim Brotherhood had a network, which at that time was about 80 countries. Today it's over 100. The U.S. Muslim Brotherhood established the U.S.-Palestine Committee, Hamas, in the United States, and created three organizations. One of those three organizations was the Occupied Land Fund, which became Holy Land Foundation. One of the other organizations was the Islamic Association of Palestine, or IAP. The leaders of IAP became the founders of the Council on American Islamic Relations. They were specifically, according to numerous documents and the government, the U.S. government itself, that CARE founders, along with other Muslim Brotherhood affiliates, support terrorists. That's a quote from the U.S. government. Specifically, CARE was the fourth organization established by Hamas in the United States. One of the three founders of CARE was on the Palestinian Committee's executive board in the United States, Omar Ahmad, and Nihad Awad and Rafiq Jaber and Omar Ahmad, the three founding members of CARE, were all in leadership positions. Rafiq Jaber and Omar Ahmad were both long-term presidents of the IAP, which is a Hamas entity, as designated by the United States government, and the evidence demonstrates that. Moving forward, the evidence in the Holy Land Foundation shows that CARE is a member of the Palestine Committee of the United States, Hamas, that the evidence demonstrates that everything they do supports that endeavor here. And as a matter of fact, the 1993 meeting of Hamas leaders in the United States was attended by Nihad Awad and Omar Ahmad, two of the founders of CARE, where those two men specifically discussed with other Hamas leaders creating a public relations front for Hamas that wasn't affiliated with Hamas, and less than a year later, CARE is created in Washington, D.C. The amount of evidence stacked up against CARE is documented. I document a lot of it in my book. It's also all open through the Holy Land Foundation evidence. And to kind of nail it down into the one pinnacle is CARE and ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, and the North American Islamic Trust, all are unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation trial. They filed a memorandum with a court saying we want our names removed from the unindicted co-conspirator list, and the prosecution, the Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office, specifically laid out all of or a great deal of the information that we're talking about here, saying CARE was intimately involved with Hamas. It's why they were created. And in his ruling, the federal judge, Judge Jorge Solis, said the government has provided ample evidence to demonstrate that CARE, ISNA, and NATE are intimately connected with the Holy Land Foundation, which is a Hamas front, with the IAP, which is a Hamas front, and with Hamas itself over in Palestine.
Why don't you just comment on the Muslim Brotherhood and, of course, Hamas and their relationship with each other and what's happening in the Middle East?
Okay. So both from historical records of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, but also from U.S. court filings, the government has identified that Hamas was founded in the late 80s, 1987 officially, by Sheikh Yassin, that it was founded as an outgrowth of the Muslim Brotherhood there, that in fact Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. And if you read their charter, it says that. So that's a fact. The relationship, therefore, between Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood in the United States it's a marriage because, in fact, Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, all Muslim Brotherhood leaders are not Hamas, but all Hamas leaders are, in fact, Muslim Brother from Palestine. So that's the inherent relationship between these organizations. So when you're talking to one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, especially the Palestinian leadership, you're talking to Hamas. CARE and these other organizations falls under that. Overseas, the relationship is one. So when you have Hamas waging violent jihad and killing people overseas, you're talking about the same group that is here in the United States, the same leaders. That's Muslim Brotherhood, Palestinian leaders here, members of the Palestine Committee here, like Council on American-Islamic Relations, are no different, just because they're wearing suits, they're no different than Hamas guys overseas killing people. They're the same. And by the way, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that that is, in fact, the way the law, the U.S. Federal Code views it, that if you are somebody overseas teaching Hamas how to wash dishes or have proper hygiene or how to do first aid, that's material support for a designated terrorist group. So if you are the Council on American-Islamic Relations, for instance, and your job is propaganda and influence operations and political subversion, that's material support. The question we as Americans need to be asking is, why is this Attorney General Department of Justice not indicting and prosecuting CARE and its leaders?